Hello everyone and welcome to the Daryl Talks podcast. Today it is another good one. We have got Claire. She is a journalist and she has been journalisting for many years and she's a very good friend. So without further ado, welcome.
Hello, Daryl.
Hello.
Hello, finally here.
We're finally here. I've been ill. Claire's been ill. She's injured herself. My daughter was in hospital. It has taken us a while to get here, but we are here.
Finally, we're here.
And I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for taking the time out, your very busy schedule, to sit here and have a chat.
I'm slightly nervous. I can't believe it.
Do you know what?
I've been interviewed by Jeremy Vine, but I'm actually more nervous about being interviewed by you, Daryl.
Because the Daryl Talks podcast is intense. You know, I like to get to the bottom of things.
Scared.
Before we start, let's just get a few icebreaker questions, calm you down a bit so you're nice and relaxed, and then we'll get into it. So, first question is, can you tell me something that not many people would know about you?
I can. I was once the top of a pyramid in an all-girl motorbike display team.
Right, you're going to have to go into a bit more for that.
Now, this is going to surprise a lot of people because A, I can't ride a motorbike, and B, I'm extremely scared of heights. So it was a challenge.
What led to that?
Me.
Alcohol?
No, I was actually sober on that occasion, but I do have the picture to prove it here.
Oh my God, that is incredible.
So that was just one of the slightly crazy things I've done in the sake of journalism over the years.
Oh my God. Second question, what would be your go-to karaoke song?
Well, there's only one song I ever do at karaoke. I never do karaoke on my own. I always have to do it with someone else. And it is Islands in the Stream.
Oh, okay.
So, Daryl, next time you bump into me in a karaoke bar, you need to be very careful because you will be my Dolly Parton.
I'll put on a wig, put some balloons at my top, and I will Dolly Parton with you for sure.
You'll be Dolly to my Kenny.
And third and final question, what would you say is the most adventurous thing you've ever done?
Probably walking across the country. I did walk from one coast of Britain to the other. Sorry, coast of England.
Where did you start?
I started at St Bees in Cumbria and I finished at Robin Hood's Bay in North Yorkshire, the other side of the country. It took about 2 weeks. Best holiday of my life.
Was it?
Great experience. About 25 miles every day. Stayed in a different pub every night. Didn't lose a single pound despite walking 250 odd miles.
What were you eating?
A lot of pub food every morning, a pub breakfast.
Oh, okay.
And there was beer as well. I love Northern beer and yes.
No, that's incredible. And did you do that with like a group or like a charity or a...
I just did it with my husband, but it's incredible. You just meet people along the way. Still got great friends who we met.
Like,
really good.
Did you not run out of things to talk about? Because that's an intense... I love my wife dearly, but 25 miles a day...
No, we were. It was pretty good. There was a few sketchy moments when
understandably
people
so
got a bit tired, and my husband had the worst pair of walking boots anyone has ever possessed, and I forced him into a shop to have a new pair. And the guy behind the counter turned around and said, "If I were you, mate, I'd buy them. She certainly scares me."
Right. So let's get into it. How do we know each other?
Well, Daryl. Do we know each other or do our dogs know each other?
Our dogs know each other very well.
You are an honorary member, sorry to interrupt.
No, absolutely.
You are an honorary member of the Churchtown Farm Wags Club. Of which none of us are wives or girlfriends. We are dog walkers.
That is exactly it.
It's Daryl's ladies, as Liz refers to us.
Yes,
I think behind up actually probably says Daryl's old ladies.
No, absolutely not. I used to walk Barry at roughly the same time that you girls would walk.
That's right.
And I always used to catch you at the end or when I was just finishing. And then one day Becky said, well, why don't you just come with us? And that was it. What they didn't realise is that I'm so clingy that they are stuck with me.
I think, Daryl, it's educational, isn't it?
It's education.
It's
my
therapy.
My eyes have been open to so many things and new ideas, plans. And it's just a really nice place to be able to say what you like.
Exactly.
And it's a great start to the day.
And Becky and Kerry will definitely be listening to this.
Yes, they will. So they're wonderful.
Well done, Daryl. Well done.
That's 2 listeners.
They are the best therapists.
And they are brutally honest, which I love.
I think really you should do a podcast with the 3 of us.
Oh my God.
We should do it out. But of course, you were referred to, like everyone else, everyone who walks their dog at Churchtown will know, is we don't normally use the human's name.
No.
We only know the dog's name. So you are, in fact, Barry's dad. You're very, very honoured when you actually called by your own name.
I know. And I'm sure you've called me other things. Barry is also surrounded by females.
He is.
So, we're a pair of studs. What can we say?
You are a pair of babe magnets, aren't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I wouldn't change it for the world. The company is amazing. So this episode is going to be called The Journalist. What is a journalist?
Well, principally, a journalist is somebody who reports the news or writes features or is on the television or radio. But they journal life or they journal events. That's where the word journalism comes from. So I suppose now you're a journalist because you are, recording, you're talking to people, you're telling their stories. So, podcasters.
That is quite weird.
Yeah, you are a journalist.
I'm going to have to update my CV.
You are?
Journalist, non-qualified.
Well, that's one of the interesting things about it is, it's one of those jobs that it is quite difficult to learn and you really learn through experience.
Where did you start?
So I started basically straight from school. I got a couple of A-levels and I'd always wanted to be a newspaper reporter. I was planning to go to university, but Mum or Dad spotted an advert in the local paper for a reporter. And it was my dream job. It's what I wanted to do. So I applied. The editor at the time liked to play cricket on Thursday and Friday afternoons. So I arranged an interview for about 1:00 on a Friday afternoon. He asked me if I knew the ABC and I got the job.
Congratulations. And obviously it ended up being a worthwhile interview.
Yeah, I would just say nowadays, if you want to get into newspapers or websites, you need a degree in journalism. You really do need a lot of qualifications. So to say I was lucky is an understatement. And to say I was young, I was 18 and, going out and working as a reporter.
I think my first thing was I wanted to be in the circus. Yeah, most people wanted to be firefighters and stuff like that. Nope. I wanted to be a trapeze artist.
I used to watch the news and I would see, it used to scare me slightly, like you talk about paparazzi, when you see a big crowd of reporters, reporting on an event. But it also, excited me. I just wanted to do that job. I wanted to be there at those big occasions and be at the centre of things.
What was the company?
So I was a cub reporter. Back in those days, you had to serve an apprenticeship. All the training was included. They sent me away for months at a time, basically to be paid to be a student, which was incredible. And I found out the other day, I went to the same journalism training college as Jeremy Clarkson, who was there just 2 years before me. All manner of famous journalists went to the same college in Sheffield. He's obviously made slightly better career choices than me, and it was great training. I was
going to say, was it fun? Was it or was it intense?
It was great fun. It was. We did various subjects. Obviously, law. You need to know your law. You need to know what you can report safely. You need to be an expert on media law. You need to understand, these are the boring bits, the way the government works at all levels, which is a very, very boring subject, but you have to understand it to be a credible journalist. And then we had journalism lessons where we would be, put in a situation where we had to
There's a lot of role playing.
And a lot of role playing, and a lot of, which I think something that is becoming obvious to you, Daryl, is that interviewing someone isn't about just having a list of pre-prepared questions. It's listening to what they say, listening to their answers.
That is completely true. I have notes that I did right at the beginning, and they were like quite intense, and they look beautiful written down.
Yeah.
But when I tried saying them out loud, I sounded like a pillock. So the last few episodes, I've not bothered with any notes. I've got my idea. I've done my research, and I know the bits that I want to go to. But just for experience, you generally just start being able to sway the conversation the right way.
Exactly.
And questions lead to questions.
Yes.
And the more questions you ask, generally speaking, the better the episode's going to be.
I had a great tutor, and he would say, you've got a story. It begins somewhere and it ends somewhere. You need to fill in all the gaps in between, and then you will write an accurate story. I think it's something that's probably been a bit lost now, because unfortunately journalists don't get as much time to do their job as we used to, but it was invaluable training for me. I also had to learn shorthand, which I can still do.
What's shorthand?
So shorthand is back in the day, we didn't have recording equipment. We had to take a note, and you need to take a note of everything. So you have to be able to do shorthand, and you have to be able to read it. And I had the most wonderful shorthand teacher whose voice was just lilting, and he could take us through it. And then we went to sit the exam, and his advice was, before you come to college tomorrow, have a glass of whiskey. Yep, 120 words a minute. I passed.
120 words? That's 2 a second. Already there is way more into journalism than I could have ever imagined. And also you touched on people not having much time. Is that because deadlines have got tighter? Well,
it's because news is now instant. I mean, everything is published straight away. So there's a race to beat the other. The race to be the first with a story isn't the first one to print it. It's the first one to post online. Also, there used to be, so many more staff for working in the local media. Be hundreds of us. Now is, a handful in comparison.
Yeah, it's a lot of coverage.
Mm.
And do you think that's hindered the industry a little bit?
Yeah, I do. I think that journalism isn't as measured. It's not as accurate as it was. There's not so much pride taken in it. Even what is now thought of as being news has changed, really.
In the world of online, anybody can be a journalist. All you need to do is put your email in, and you've got a blog spot.
Exactly.
Or put on a camera on your phone, and you can upload that to social media.
I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think that, it's been controlled for too long, and that everyone should have a right to have a freedom of speech, and, to do things like you're doing, where you're having you're doing a great series of interviews with really interesting people. Long before I lived in Saltash, my first job was on a newspaper called the Dover Express,
right? And
I started working there just a few months after the Zeebrugge disaster,
right?
Which was a terrible tragedy when a ferry capsized and sank. With the loss of hundreds of lives, including many of the crew who were people from Dover. It was obviously a massive story, and one that, the local newspaper had to cover, as sensitively as possible without, missing the facts to be reported.
Yeah, because I guess it's your friends and family that...
Yeah, but you would find yourself going to interview. Well, I know you. It'd be like, I'd be sent round, you say, well, it was my dad that died. It was a real place to learn how to be a responsible journalist, and that if you had to report things that were difficult, at least ensure that they were accurate. But a really, really difficult but very strong place to begin my career.
Oh, absolutely. Like, if you're brought up with decent ethics and basically your habits are in the right place or right mindset, it's going to be good.
Yeah.
It's going to be good. It's going to be truthful. It's difficult to tell what is clickbait and what is not these days because there's so many different things. Like Facebook used to be photos. Now it's all news.
And it's impossible. Like if you look at Twitter, it's impossible to know what's real and what's a joke now. It's
Time will tell.
Time will tell.
So how long were you in that newspaper for?
So I worked there for a few years because I was apprentice. I had to stay.
So how long was this apprenticeship?
It was 3 years. I was indentured for 3 years. Old folk like me will be familiar with the term indenturing. And then that was a weekly newspaper. I wanted to work on a daily newspaper. At that time, the sort of career path would be to work on a weekly paper, then get yourself on a daily paper in a city. And that would normally be a stepping stone then to working in London on the nationals.
Oh, okay.
So I left over. I went to work on the Northampton Chronicle and Echo, quite a big newspaper at the time. And then I moved back to work on the Kent Evening Post in Chatham so that I could spend weekends working in London. So I would do shifts on various tabloid newspapers, which was a totally different experience to the ethical reporting that I had been doing for local newspapers.
Were they slightly looser on their morals?
They were. I don't know if I'm proud of this or not, but I did actually do shifts on the Sunday Sport.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was just quite an experience.
And for those of you who don't know, it is a great news. They have some great articles in there, but they're mostly bought by gentlemen because the articles are that good for gentlemen.
I also did shifts on the News of the World, and this was all at the time of
my lord,
pre-Leveson, when the journalism of that time came under a lot of scrutiny, the secret taping, but it was all great experience. However, I did decide that it wasn't for me, and that the future of my career was going to be in being a member of a trusted news source. And I applied for the editorship of my first newspaper, and I became its editor when I was 28, which is
that is fantastic.
Quite young.
Yeah, that is very young. I wonder if there was many at the time that 28-year-old... What happened next then?
Well, I then wanted to get back onto a daily newspaper, and I fancied living in the West Country.
Ooh-are.
I've been down on holiday, like so many people, and I thought, well, actually, I'd quite like to live there. So I applied for a job on the Western Morning News, and I came down to work on the news desk of the Western Morning News. So the Western Morning News, for those who aren't familiar with it, is a daily paper covering the whole of Devon and Cornwall. So that was around 1998 I moved.
No way.
So I've just celebrated 25 years working for the company which runs the Western Morning News and the Plymouth Herald, the Western Evening Herald.
That's a long old career in one place.
Well, yeah, I've done lots of different jobs
within that.
So I worked on the news desk. I was the production editor of the Western Morning News. Then I became the deputy editor of the Herald. It was a job that I did for a long time. Great fun. And then latterly the editor of the Herald.
So an editor?
Yes.
What is that?
Okay. So the editor is the main person.
The head honcho. Oh,
the top dog.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are amidst somebody very important.
The editor is the person who, the boss. They run the show.
So you have the last... You make the final decision?
Make the final decision, decide what's going on the front page, what the headline's going to be. You tell the reporters what you'd like them to cover. They come to you, they pitch ideas, but you basically decide what they're going to do.
Have you got constantly be watching news stuff?
Yes, it gets quite tiring.
I can imagine. Because generally speaking, the news isn't so positive anymore.
No. I think it's very interesting. I really picked up from listening to your podcast, Daryl, the stories people have got about the pandemic, COVID, and how it changed their lives. Well, it also changed my life and my career, or how we worked, because we obviously couldn't go. We had to work from home for the first time, but we were still, unlike anyone else, news just doesn't stop. And obviously during the pandemic, it was constant. There was no escaping from the news, watching, everything unfold.
Because also, it was all we had.
It was the only thing. There was other news. There was nothing else. There was no sport. There was absolutely, no nice events to talk about. There was people standing on their doorsteps clapping, and then apart from that, there was,
loved ones just couldn't see one another.
No,
it was just horrendous. But I can from my episodes, a lot of positivity has come out of it.
Yeah, I was just listening to them all and I was thinking, what a great feature to tie together the things that you've drawn out of your interviewees about how they made positive. I love positive stories. I'm not a negative journalist. I love anything positive.
I can't imagine you being a negative journalist.
No, I do love to tell good stories, and like I say, I loved hearing all those little, ideas and, opportunities that people grabbed hold of. Like
the musician. He wrote songs based on the news. What do you think it would need to get back to some sort of positive, on a televised newspaper?
It's always said that good news doesn't sell and people aren't really interested in good news. But when you get sort of a really happy story, those little stories they have at the end of the TV news.
Yeah.
And you go, everyone loves those stories.
Doris has got a three-legged duck.
But it's got to reflect life, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And it has to reflect the dark side. And unfortunately,
in the UK, we are pretty pessimistic as well.
We are.
And so it's no wonder that we report on negative things and in a slightly negative way, but we then get to moan about it being negative. So we get to be negative about negativity.
Yeah.
And so, you're right. That
interestingly, I think the readership of less people are buying newspapers. Let's not pretend that they are. Younger people aren't buying newspapers. They're getting their news online. The people still buying newspapers are generally older and they like positive news. And what I found over the last few years was that putting a very negative story on the front page wasn't going to sell any more copies. And actually people wanted to hear the positive. So I've very much lent towards trying not to have anything negative. Now people listen to this will probably go, what do you mean? There's always negative stuff on the front of the Herald. But I think there has to be a balance. If something terrible's happened, you've got to report it.
Absolutely.
But if you can possibly, people get very excited about, big developments, changes in the city. They genuine news is what they want.
How much do you rely on research then and feedback?
Well, a lot, yeah. You need to listen to the readers. I've always my advice to anyone who's working in any kind of media is to listen to the feedback. I'm not so sure about reading the comments on Facebook.
No, I definitely wouldn't.
That's just a whole minefield.
Yeah,
they're so negative.
So it's an intriguing world that actually I'd love to ask some questions because I don't understand, and that's what a lot of what this podcast is. It's me trying to understand how somebody gets to be in such a privileged position and through hard work and opportunity and taking opportunities. But also, I'd love to be questioning the serial troll.
You often find that the quietest people are the worst keyboard warriors.
Oh yeah.
And when you actually meet them, they'll appear to be the most unassuming, but they're there on the comments section.
Yeah, and
criticising everyone.
People who love a Facebook status that is completely outrageous and completely subjective. It's incredible. I love it. I love observing drama, but I don't like to be in it. Is there a lot of competition for jobs?
Yeah, it is really, it is particularly now. Like I say, I was very lucky. It's unheard of now to just walk into a job, particularly at 18. You do need to have a degree in journalism to work for a media company like I've worked for, or to work for the BBC, for example, you really do need to have a degree.
When did you get your degree then?
Well, I only got my degree last year.
That's amazing.
Yes.
And did you just do that purely because of potential next steps?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, I wanted to...
Be able to.
Yeah, I wanted to be able to seek other opportunities. I was thinking I'd like to work abroad. I started the degree before Brexit.
Did you?
Yes. So,
Wow.
yeah, a degree in French and Spanish isn't quite so useful now. Genuine interest. It's not a job to go into unless you... I can remember when I went to work in Northampton, and it was a Saturday shift, and the news editor said to me, "Can you go and cover football this afternoon?" I said, "Well, I don't know anything about football." He said, "I don't know anything about knitting," for example.
Did he?
So I'd have to go and cover the knitting club. So he sent me to cover a football match. But the deadline was so tight that you had to file at half time.
What?
So you didn't actually have a complete report. And you had to phone over. So this is like you had to find a phone box and you had to phone over.
Find a phone box.
Yeah.
Of course, it was no mobiles.
No mobiles. So I get to half time. I'd been basically done what the news editor said was, well, if you don't know about a subject, Claire, what do you do? And I said, well, you ask somebody. He said, yes. So when you get to the football ground, just ask someone to explain what is happening. So I asked somebody, and then I went to the phone box, filed my copy at half time, and went back into the office on Monday. And the sports desk, I went up to sports desk and said, how was my copy? I see it made it. I was really excited about doing my first football report. And they said, yeah, Claire, we need to explain to you what an own goal is.
Oh my God.
Because you described the own goal like it was the best play in the whole game. Do you know what an own goal is, Claire? I was like, So from that point onwards, I didn't get sent to cover Town League football.
Way. And so how does it work with people submitting stuff to yourself as an editor?
As an editor.
So is there more than enough to go in the newspaper and then you have to say,
yes,
that's not good enough? Or
loads of stuff. You get, thousands of emails, loads of phone calls, all sorts of people wanting stuff. You've got to decide what's news, what's basically just a free puff. You're going to find this. You're going to interview interesting people, and then you're going to find other people who want to talk to you because they want to publicise things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's certain things that you've got to report on. But one is like breaking news. So, if there's fires or accidents, that's what we refer to as breaking news. There's been an awful incident on Merseyside. You probably saw it on the news earlier on, stabbing of children.
15-year-old girl?
Yeah, and... haven't talked about it yet, don't particularly want to, but how I had to react to the news in Keyham when those people were really, really difficult, something that
everybody knew someone, because it's such a small community. When things like that happen, it is such a small community. The world gets so much smaller.
Mm-hmm. But as I was saying to you earlier on, you can't not report it. It has to, and people expect it, but they don't want to read... They don't want to read half a story, and they don't want to read things that are incorrect. So one of the biggest challenges, particularly for a print, for newspapers, is that there's a massive gap now between when the papers are printed and when people read it.
Yeah.
So very, very difficult, but you have to report it. You can't be a newspaper without reporting those kind of big stories.
Is there like a high turnover of staff then, in terms of like the reporters or are they people that stay in a job for like a long time like yourself?
No, I think I'm quite unusual, definitely, for how long I've worked in basically local newspapers. Yeah. I think I've got one or two I can think of who I know who have done the same as me. But generally, a lot of people start off as journalists. They'll either go and work for the national press or national websites. They'll work in radio, TV. They'll become, they'll be like Jeremy Clarkson, as we said.
Yeah.
Exactly the same start as myself, but, is a
Goes a
big,
completely different avenue.
Yeah. And then so many people also move into public relations and marketing because they can earn more money, or they used to be able to earn more money. I don't know if it's still true.
I bet everywhere's
it's
just...
a grind. Journalism is a grind. It's all hours. You can't just, you can't say, well, I finish at 6 and that's it, because if the big story breaks, you're going to have to stay and cover it. News doesn't stop at weekends. I can't believe the amount of people that will say to me, why do you work on a Sunday? I said, well, because the news isn't going to stop.
So do you have like an opposite? Or are you just available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week?
No, you do work. You do work in shifts, and all journalists will work in shifts. But
that's what I mean. So
I can tell you if
what happens when you're not there?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can have a break.
Yeah, of course.
But generally, and the way news is now with websites, there is somebody there all the time.
Yeah.
And they are working in shifts. It is constant news. And then you've got your other stories, which is like kind of what you're alluding to, is your other stories, your interests, what we call human interest. So we've talked about, the three-legged duck.
Doris.
Yeah. The 100-year-old. We used to cover so many 100-year-olds. Now it's not that bigger.
Because people are living longer.
We used to cover golden weddings. And now so many people married for more than 50 years.
The thing, my mum, my nan and my granddad, they love the obituaries.
I know.
Oh my lord. It's just, they still. Oh, that's all you hear when they open the paper.
So it will be a sad day, and I'm afraid it's coming when there aren't newspapers, because people aren't buying them anymore. And it's very sad to think that you won't have that Hatch Marriage Dispatch section.
Yeah.
Births, marriages and deaths, because it's what's probably best read.
Yeah, my mum's still got the clippings of when I was born.
Yep. And it's just not the same online, is it?
No, it's really not.
It's really not the same.
Because of the reality that anybody can write anything online, which is the problem, but also the blessing. Because how does that work in journalism with offending someone in a world where...
it's all controlled now, Darragh, since Leveson, and there's the agreement, basically, media standards that all of the press now adhere to, rules on privacy.
So are there, like, official presses? Like, I'm going to use a terrible... So, like, if an egg has got the lion stamp on it, it's a proper egg?
Yes, yeah.
So, in terms of journalists, have they got the little lion stamp?
Yes, they have, yeah.
Oh, okay, so...
Yeah.
So, for, like, famous people, for example, will their PR teams be looking for the lion stamp?
Yes, they will, yes. Yeah.
I'm so sorry for describing all your hard work down to a stamp on an egg, but that's the only way I can sort of describe it.
So you've got your trusted media.
Yeah.
And you've got citizen journalists, people like you, Darragh.
Yeah, me turning up. You wait because Wayne Rooney's coming on in a few weeks.
Well, I was going to say, it's about time you got him on, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. But he was a bit worried about me a threat with Colleen.
Colleen, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think he'd want to come on your podcast.
Do you know what? I would even go to him. I assume you've met loads of celebrities, though.
I have met quite a few celebrities, yeah.
Are there any that, like, stick in your mind as, like, a cool story? Or are they all boring?
I'm trying to think of some interesting stories now with celebrities. Who have I interviewed?
Do you still do interviewing?
Yes, yeah. So I latterly was editor, but
Yeah.
I also managed to find time to do quite a few stories.
Oh, that's amazing.
But obviously over the years I've managed to interview quite a few celebrities. People before they were celebrities.
Yeah.
Tom Daly used to come in the office.
Did he?
Yeah, he used to pop in with his dad. Yeah.
Why?
Well, because he would want to fill us in on how he was doing with his diving.
Oh, sorry, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
I thought you meant like before that.
No. He started diving when he was probably 7, I think, and he was competing in Plymouth. So yeah, his dad would bring him in, and they'd have a little chat. They'd hang around the office.
No way.
I've met most of the prime ministers.
Have you?
Yeah. They like to do a round just before the elections. They like to do a round of the local media offices.
Who's the nicest?
Oh, Theresa May.
Really?
Yeah, she's really lovely.
Was there anybody that was like a bit up themselves? All of them.
All of them.
No, was there one that you least like?
What was his name? Ian Duncan Smith.
Yeah.
Ian Duncan Smith gave the most boring, the most limp handshake. I also had lunch with Michael Howard, who was Home Secretary.
Yeah.
He had the most limp handshake.
What is it with the...
Theresa May, lovely firm handshake.
Yeah, I probably would expect that. Like, can't imagine Jacob Rees-Mogg having a decent handshake.
No, I can't. But I imagine that Keir Starmer's got a good firm
Absolutely,
handshake.
and he will not break eye contact with you, you know?
No.
Like,
yeah,
it's all like... I think he'll be loving the mind games. I can't wait for the, 20-minute handshake with Trump that's going to go on, the power struggle where they're, holding each other's forearms and all that.
It's going to be interesting.
What advice would you give someone who wanted to get into journalism now? Or what questions do you think they need to ask themselves before they pursue that career?
Okay, well, as I said, they need to be genuinely interested in people. They need to know that it's a tough job. They need to know, particularly now, that they're going to get a lot of criticism. They need to be quite tough as well. And that it's not always a great laugh. There's sort of a lot of serious moments. They need to be, you need to be quite tough. You need to be able to step away, and just report and not get too involved. You need to be impartial, which is very, very difficult. Compartmentalised.
That's the word I was thinking of, Claire. Thank you.
But yeah, it's very important to be impartial, very important not to get too close to a story, to be able to report in a fair and balanced way.
Has there ever been anything that you've just not been able to?
No, I can put hand on heart and think I've always managed to, it's been some really difficult things. Like I say, I've been involved, in reporting some, really, really big stories, including recently, as I said, the horrible incident in Keyham, which was very hard to report, but I wouldn't have missed it.
No, of course not.
The Keyham bomb more recently. What a great story.
I know.
And with so many years doing the job, you can't imagine that there's going to be another story of so different that you would ever have that happening on your doorstep. And, sometimes you get a bit tired and you're like, oh no, they found a bomb, or they just get rid of it. But actually, when you look back,
it's incredible.
The headlines, people that you get to talk to, it's amazing.
Could you explain to anybody who isn't from round here about the...
So, was it earlier this year?
It was earlier this year.
It was earlier this year. They discovered an unexploded World War II bomb in a garden in Keyham, which is very close to the dockyard in Plymouth. They had to detonate, they had to make it safe, which meant either detonating it in situ, that would be their preferable thing, but because it was so close to so many homes and to the dockyard, the nuclear dockyard, that wasn't possible. So eventually they had to very carefully remove the bomb, and they took it out to sea, having paraded it through Plymouth, took it out to sea and exploded it safely. I'm not sure it was very safe for the dolphins, but it was safe for the people of Plymouth. People evacuated from their homes. You just don't imagine that in 2024 you're going to be writing headlines about people being evacuated from their homes. Incredible, Daryl.
Yeah, because of a World War II bomb. It's been a while.
It has been a while.
For the people involved and the amount of effort that was needed to go into that was just incredible.
Yeah,
you wouldn't think
people.
It would be that serious. But when
imagine though, if someone came and knocked on your door and went, "Sorry, Darryl, you've got to get out now. Get your kids out of bed. Yeah. You've got to leave your house."
And you might not have a house to come back to.
Yeah. If
all things go tits up.
Yeah. Your neighbour has found a bomb in his garden.
What's your house insurance like?
Well, that's the other thing. That's a story that's ongoing. I love an ongoing story, but you've got to feel so sorry that house insurance doesn't cover acts of war. So
No
if those houses
way.
had been blown up, they wouldn't have been able to claim on because it's an act of war.
Oh my God.
Serious loophole, really, when you think.
And a lot of people did reach out, and the community really sort of
it was
came together a bit,
incredible,
didn't they?
Yeah, incredible sense of community.
And I guess on a positive spin, that would be that's the bit you would want to.
Yeah, that's
aim
what I
for,
did.
is the fact how well a community come together.
I did one of my favourite front pages at the end of it, where I got pictures of as many of the people who had helped as possible and put them on the front page with the headline, Our Heroes, because I think, they were such special people.
Have you got any like articles or moments that you're like really proud of?
I got things that stick out. I think what I'd be most proud of is when we've managed to cover big stories really comprehensively. But individually, it's quite hard because the sort of stories that you expose, you think, well, it's quite hard to tell them. But I have got some that I am quite proud of. One was a former government minister who I was tipped off was going to be in court for speeding. And so I managed to cover the whole thing. My phone was red hot with national newspapers wanting my story. So that was great. I equally had it always seems to be stories about speeding, but I also had a police chief constable, that's the top policeman, who had ordered his chauffeur to break the speed limit just because he was late for his dinner. I also, during this period of working for the tabloids, I came up with a brilliant story that did get picked up in some of the national tabloids. So the village where I lived, there was a little garden shop, sold compost gnomes.
Yeah.
Sold a lot of gnomes. And it had previously been a butcher's shop.
Right, okay.
But people in the pub next to it, which used to be frequented by my dad, parents are always the best source of stories if you ever want a tip on journalism. But my dad said, "A story for you, love." He said, the woman running the garden shop is isn't really running a garden shop. Her clients are coming in and they're going away with gnomes, and people are going around the village to see where the gnomes are, to see who's been frequenting her business.
She was a lady of the night.
She was a lady of the night. And the story, I think the Sunday Mirror headline was "The Best Gnome, Sweet Gnome." And so I was responsible for shutting down the village brothel.
No. I bet you were not popular.
It was not popular in the village.
No, I bet.
My dad also disowned me.
Oh my God!
And it was the perfect. I didn't go, obviously, but someone else had to go in and do our reporters made their excuses and left line.
Oh my God!
Those sorts of stories where nobody gets hurt, but but they are exposing wrongdoing, as it were. Probably some of my highlights.
You mentioned about like selling stories.
Yes.
Does that happen locally?
Not so much now. It doesn't happen so much now because obviously everything is on the internet.
So
we're talking about the days when it was really just newspapers.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know how, but they would find out, or you would let them know that you maybe had a really good story that they might want to be printing in the national newspapers. So it was quite a lucrative little second income to be able to sell on your stories.
Yeah, because now it's just photos.
We talked about the pandemic and how that changed, and the things that were reported at the beginning of the pandemic. Everyone was criticising the press for being too critical of the government, not supporting the government, and then the things that came out and they were exposed. They only came out because of dogged, hard-working journalism. For example, Partygate. None of that would have come out if journalists had not been determined and they could easily have given into lots and lots of criticism and persuasion not to run those stories. But, effectively, that story was the downfall of the government.
Yeah.
So you're there to hold people to account.
Is it weird
not
being part
job.
of that industry, though?
It's weird, but it's also amazing.
I can imagine.
It's absolutely
It's
amazing.
like exhilarating. Is it a bit slower down here, would you say?
I don't think anywhere...
Not the people.
I don't think anywhere is slower than anywhere else. Obviously, London is the centre of things, but I don't think it's slower.
No.
I think there's just as much news, just as much going on.
And so what does the future look like for you?
Well, interestingly, after 25 years with the Herald and Western Morning News and even longer, totally wedded to newspapers, I've just made a break and I'm going to be working for the BBC. But I'll be working for the BBC in the Southwest, and obviously that's mainly I'll be working for their website, but obviously also radio and television. So it's a departure from print into the modern world.
Oh my God.
Very exciting.
Yeah, just like technology, you've moved with it.
I have finally moved with it. But, it's really interesting, Daryl. I've really got a few years behind me, but I've got, a few years ahead of me as well. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, it's just exciting, isn't it?
Follow your dreams. If you still want to change a slight change in career, or you want to take the next step, don't write yourself off.
It was where does one find a job? I wouldn't.
Well, Dal, you need to be getting across this.
No,
don't you?
Yeah, was it on Indeed? I must have missed that one.
No, it wasn't on Indeed.
Monsterjobs.co.uk? No, not on there.
No.
Is there a special journalism job?
There is lots of specialist journalism job sites, but you can also sign up for. This is interesting for anyone really that's thinking about it. You can sign up for alerts for the BBC jobs page.
No way.
And it will let you know if there's anything going that's suitable for you.
Well, maybe if there's a radio presenter.
Indeed, if there's a radio presenter.
Greg James, watch out. Oh, so...
The chocolate voice of Daryl Lumsden.
Exactly. I would be put on the late night, wouldn't I? Definitely.
Send everyone to sleep.
Welcome to Daryl Radio. They don't do that anymore, do they?
I don't think so.
No, it's all like untsy music after like 8 o'clock. So have you got any experience in like radio and... I've
done quite a few radio interviews. I've been on Radio 5, talking about boy racers in Plymouth. I was actually...
I could have been one of them.
You could have been one of them.
Oh my God. I couldn't drive, but I used to be in the car.
You used to be in the car?
With the boy racer, yeah.
Ah. Yep. So I was asked to take part in a debate on that. I've been interviewed by Jeremy Vine.
Have you?
I have.
How does it compare?
Oh, well. I regularly used to be on Radio Devon. I used to do a morning news summary on Radio Devon. God. So I'm not a stranger.
Was it like an interview process?
Yeah.
Did you have to be like screened and go through different application?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
How did that feel?
Very nerve-wracking.
Has it been a while since you've done it as well?
Yes.
But I suppose if you're just yourself, because you're so lovely, I'd employ you.
Thank you, Daryl.
That's okay. I may be looking for an editor. Doesn't pay so well.
Now you come to mention that. Now, you didn't ask me what my ick was, did you? You didn't ask me.
So, fourth and final question. What is your biggest ick?
Bad grammar, Daryl.
Interesting.
So I have been carefully through your podcast and I have made a few corrections.
Have you actually?
Actually, it's not bad. I'm quite impressed.
Is that on the descriptions bit?
I have been through and I've had a little look, but no.
Oh, what was the worst?
Spotted one or two errors.
What was the worst culprit? Was it a colon?
It might have been a colon. It might have been a rogue apostrophe.
I have been known to over apostrophize.
Yes.
Is that
rogue
a thing?
Apostrophe is it's probably my pet hate.
I suppose being in the job you are, you can't help yourself.
No.
Do you listen to podcasts?
I do listen to podcasts.
Do you?
Yes.
No way.
Yeah, I've listened to all of your podcasts.
Oh my God. We've got a fan. There may only be one. Well, thank you so much, Claire. Thank you for taking the time out to do this episode. I know it's taken a bit of time to get there, but it was definitely worth it.
Thank you, Daryl.
So there we go. Another episode of the Daryl Talks podcast. once again, please keep following, keep sharing, keep talking about it. Cheers.